Welcome back to God of War. We solved that puzzle to dramatic music. All I did was open a door, guys. You don't have
We
to
have to
play
get
that
a
right
similar
now.
OST going next time we play Jenga.
One thing I will give God of War graphically is that it manages to pull off a, shall we say, realistic-looking art style without necessarily going the cartoony route like some other games did. I find
What other
fairly
games are you
impressive.
comparing it to?
Most games that looked good on the PS2.
Why do you always sound like you're about to take a shit when you play like that?
Because I'm trying not to be incredibly rude about how I say things. The most realistic games on the PlayStation 2 looked like complete and utter shite.
And they still do.
Yeah, like the only good looking ones that I can really call to mind are like Resident Evil 4 and God of War and maybe what
Well,
else?
Final Fantasy X was really good at the time.
Final Fantasy X was going for more of an anime look.
Yeah. Like, games that hold up well are things like, from that era, are things like Tales of Symphonia, or anything
I
going
would
for a
say Symphonia.
cartoon or anime-type aesthetic.
Well,
Stuff that's
like,
trying to
there's,
look even remotely realistically tends to not age as well, as a general
Well,
rule.
yeah, like there's a certain visual style that quite a few games went for, where things were partly anime-esque, so that they could look plastic and not look strange about it. And games like Final Fantasy X and Devil May Cry 3 and I want to say Ninja Gaiden had that kind of look and feel to it.
I never really got anime or anime-esque out of 10.
Have you seen those character designs?
Yeah, I think, character designs, but
Have you seen Seymour's hair?
The environment.
If we're talking about-
The
But,
environment.
with Final
to me,
Fantasy X, though, there was also the graphical issue that, things looked really great during cutscenes, but when you got to the actual gameplay graphics, they went back to looking like ass.
You get the tried and true PS2 lit flaps.
That was also a thing to consider for that particular game, and it was mostly true of a lot of other games as well, even the ones that went and look cartoony, like the Jack and Daxter series was horrible about it.
See, because to me, anime would, that goes with presentation, aesthetic.
Yeah,
You can't tell. Okay, hold on. You can't tell me that Final Fantasy X does not have anime qualities in like its story and all that shit. Like Final Fantasy X is super anime, super
Really?
anime. Yeah. Have you heard the freaking story to Final Fantasy X? That's anime as shit.
It's basically the story of Tales of Symphonia, but but what I'm talking about is more like the way the aesthetics play into the graphical quality. Like a lot of games around that time went for a more cartoony art style to disguise the fact that they were limited in how many polygons they could use. God of War pulls it off more by keeping the camera pulled back so that you can't see the graphical flaws quite as badly. So in that sense, it's quite nice looking. But
Its graphics have aged better than like if you were to go back to like one of the Call of Duty 2 or 3, which I believe were on PS2.
Call of Duty 2 or 3, or Prince of Persia Warrior Within, which was the first game in that series that tried to not have a cartoony aesthetic.
Or
I just like there was a point of our
Gold-
lives where Call of Duty actually had numerical values for their sequels.
Oh yeah. No. Oh wait, no. I'm thinking of Battlefield, which went back to 1. But no. Yeah. I remember when Call of Duty Modern Warfare was still called Call of Duty 4, and then they made Modern Warfare 2, and I'm like, okay, so they're pulling a Final Fantasy there. I remember thinking that specifically.
A sequel to a sequel.
Yeah.
A sub-sequel.
Meanwhile, we
But,
got Madden over here, who's all the way up to Madden 2000, then all of a sudden we're back to Madden 18. What
Yeah.
happened to like Madden 21 through like 1987?
I know that Mega Man's had a lot of games, but the 64th by that point, that seems a little far-fetched.
You know, I will give sports games this. For as limited as they are, it does allow them to have very, very pretty localized graphics. Like, the crowd in the background of a UFC game is horrendous looking, but the actual people that you're fighting as or fighting against look really great.
Oh, of course, those look good because they have to license, they have to pay to use the to use those athletes' faces, so they better look good.
That is not a guarantee. If you go back to the Lord of the Rings games on PS2, like even by PS2 standards, those faces look wonky as shit. And
even then, I don't think it's up to the player's discretion. I think it's up to the NFL's discretion that they have to ask.
Yeah.
So.
But
oh no, the players when they go into the NFL sign their souls away. I'm sure.
Yeah, but like the real advantage to a sports game is that at any one time you only really need to focus the graphics on a very specific very specific number of things. So those specific number of things can be really, really nice looking, and that's pretty much the entire reason that any given EA sports game looks as realistic as it does. Like I mentioned the UFC games, but they're like the only games that I can mention that have bothered to have jiggle physics for every individual part of every person's body.
Well, I mean,
like realistic arm flaps.
Well, honestly, between every year, it's not like they're spending money on actually improving the game at all.
Well, actually, for the UFC, the UFC games are a case where they really do need to improve the games because they haven't figured out a system that completely works yet.
Well, my question is, who's on the cover this year, and are they incredibly disappointed in me?
Well, the last UFC game was the first game with Ronda Rousey on the cover. It also happened to be released around the time she was finally beaten.
Oh, so it's like the Madden curse. It's like the Madden curse.
The UFC has a cover curse.
I believe Tom Brady's on the cover this year, and everybody's hoping that it goes into It's kind of weird. Everybody else in the world is hoping that it goes into effect, and everybody in Boston is hoping it doesn't.
Now that I think about it, I should probably mention that while we're recording, the McGregor versus Mayweather fight is probably happening as we speak. So.
Well, no, it's the main event of that sporting event, so it probably happened around midnight.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's in Vegas, so.
Yeah, people are paying however much obnoxious amounts of money, so they're going to have a lot of filler in order to make it feel like they're getting more for their buck when they're really not.
But since this part is obviously going up afterwards, it was a great fight. Got a little weird, though, when that clown decided to interrupt everything.
Oh, but speaking of clowns, have you heard of the clowns only showing a bit?
No. What is this?
As a joke about the whole women's only Wonder Woman streaming earlier.
Oh.
Someone made a joke post about a men's only screening of a different movie. So someone followed up that with a clowns only screening of it, and of course now that's actually happening. So if you want to go see the movie, you now have to dress up like the clown.
Or you could just watch it at a different time slot.
Well, no, but I
still don't understand why that was such a big deal.
Come on, Lewis. You'd be perfect as that one guy in the theater that's not in a clown suit, just shifting his eyes back and forth, wondering who's gonna attack me first.
Didn't we already do the thing about the?
Well, now we have to do another one.
Yeah, I was wondering if I put the wrong part up by mistake.
Nope.
But
nope, we have to do a second one.
I
don't know why you're making me read this, Kratos. I know what you're gonna do anyway.
Mash that circle button, Kratos. Hold his head underwater. Hold it there. Hold it there. I'm sorry, I just don't like the order of 1880, whatever it was.
Oh my.
Okay.
The trophy means wings, obviously.
Oh my.
They're talking about poker.
Man. I think the real reason that I don't really like Kratos all that much is because his personality is
Garbage?
Well, yeah, but it's not a believable sort of garbage. It's like you can't really follow his mental processing. He's just angry. But the thing that makes angry something that you can relate to is being able to follow his mental processing. Like, I realized while I was thinking of this between parts that I was able to emotionally connect with the Doom 2016 protagonist to a degree that I never was able to with Kratos, simply because the things he was angry at were things that I would have been angry at in his position.
That's my secret, Lewis. I'm always angry.
And that made him doing stuff like throwing the monitor away at the very beginning of the game feel somewhat relatable, even though it was also meant to be funny, or, you know, just...
Destroying Guardian energy filters.
Or just supposed to be dumb humor. Yeah, like, it's... And, you know, part of this is that he doesn't talk. It makes it easier to project onto him. But the fact that I was able to, on some level, connect with this character who had exactly one personality trait and nothing else is, in its own way, kind of impressive. Whereas Kratos has only one personality trait, but it's portrayed in a very specific way that makes me think he's, you know, an asshole. Just an asshole. Like, there's no... Like, he has no legs to stand on. So...
I have two ones right here.
You see, here's the thing, though. I feel like that could work in a game if you feel like... how am I trying to say this? I feel like that could work in a game if the game didn't try to project himself as also, like, doing the right thing, or I need to do what's necessary, or whatever. Like, if the point was to be an asshole... Like, and, like...
I suppose that's also part of it.
Yeah,
yeah, like, you're supposed to feel like his goal is the goal to follow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's nothing about it that can be effectively connected to.
Yeah, it's I'm having a hard time...
You can't make your own judgment about his goals because the game makes the judgments for you, or attempts to make the judgments for you.
Because I'm thinking, like, in a game like Grand Theft Auto, for instance, like, there's... The character you're playing in that game is always just, like, a complete criminal douchebag. Like,
whether they speak or not.
Yeah, whether they speak or not. And, like, your goal in that game is also to do bad things. So it doesn't really feel as bad when you're doing it, and, like, there's some sort of, like...
You can sort of disconnect yourself even while you connect to it. It's
yeah.
strange.
And I'm thinking, like, even in a story-based game...
Well, it's easier to connect to when in Vice City when I'm listening to some awesome 80s tunes.
Yeah, but, you know, setting the peripheral stuff aside, one of the things about Vice City in particular, I think, is that, you know, even though you couldn't necessarily sympathize with what your character was doing, there were parts of them that you could sympathize with, to a degree. On the other hand, when you're playing as the typical silent Grand Theft Auto 3 protagonist. I think that was when the protagonist was still silent, right? 3?
By 3 the protagonist was still silent, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it 4 with the first spoken protagonist?
Nico was the first one.
No.
Well, Nico was the first one to have, like, a really big backstory, but...
Yeah.
Well, no, I think starting with Vice City, they all had their backstories and also had voice acting.
Yeah, and, you know, it's fairly effective when it comes to that, because you have a sense of where the character came from and why they are the way they are, so you can disapprove of them and still connect to them in a way. So you can disconnect from them, but also disconnect from yourself, I suppose. And Kratos just has this really generic, oh, my family is dead, story that doesn't really have any depth at all to it. And, you know, depth is not something you should really be thinking too much about in a game like this. But
here's the thing, though. It feels like this...
It'd be more... It would have been more of a tragic story if Kratos wasn't such an asshole before his family
no. I feel like him being an asshole before his family is killed is what makes it tragic to some extent. The thing I'm thinking is that the game is trying to have its cake and eat it too. Because if the game was, you know, if Kratos was just an asshole and the game wasn't trying to make us feel sorry for him, after the point where the game stops even pretending that it's supposed to be like a tragedy, like in God of War 2, from what I've seen, like there's really no reason to feel bad for Kratos that he lost his godhood. He deserved it, you know? So you have this asshole character, and they're trying to make you feel bad for him, but not have him do anything wrong or have him like need to try to redeem himself in any way, and it doesn't work like that. You know, either the character has to acknowledge that something's wrong, or it needs to be unfair, and it's none of those things. Kratos did do something wrong, and it is fair that he got his godhood taken away from him, even if Zeus is being a dick about it. You know, so yeah, the fact that Zeus turns out to be evil in the end, honestly, kind of just seems tertiary to me. It's like they're trying to justify something that didn't need to be, that was unjustifiable in the first place.
It seems like it's too little too late when,
Yeah.
when it comes to the point of Kratos possibly being right.
Honestly, I think it would have been a more interesting story if they just had Zeus not be, like, evil at all. Like, you know, what if, like, you are
No,
straight up
just
playing
have
as
the
a
game
villain?
be you're playing as the bad guy.
Yeah, like Braid or something.
Which there is reason to have a game like that.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially look at Braid.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Everybody knows that spoiler by now. It's not a spoiler anymore. What was I going to say? Yeah, but no, there's value to be had in a story where you do play as the villain and where you are the bad guy. It's just the game needs to know that that's what it's trying to do.
Yeah, well, Blood Omen 2 in the Legacy of Kain series had that going for it. You were just a villain that was taken down by a bigger villain. And
Or Red Arbiter in Demon's Crest.
Yeah, in that game, my favorite line in the first game is that you beat the game, and then in the credits it says the Ghoul Realm is safe? ? Once again. And it's like, yeah, the game knows that you're the bad guy. You know.
And you know, it is a foregone conclusion that, like, eventually Kain does become a good guy again, but it's not really alluded to in Blood Omen 2 itself. Blood Omen 2 is just a case where, okay, he's trying to get his power back so he can resume his conquest of the world, and there is one tragedy toward the end where this female vampire he's sort of taken a liking to disagrees with him or doesn't trust him to do the right thing after the Seraphan are destroyed, so he winds up having to kill her in a fight, and at the end he feels somewhat remorseful about how that turned out, but he still blames her. So,
oh, no, I can't do anything wrong. I'm the hero.
no, he's like, you should have trusted me. You could have been my queen. Blood Omen 2 is the worst train wreck of a game that I've ever played, but it's also really fun and really good in places. It was.
Have you guys ever played Ascension, like the
God of War?
game?
It was one of those things I meant to get to, but I just never did.
Where does it take place in the timeline?
It's a prequel.
It's a prequel?
Before all of them. Before the first game.
Oh, so Hades. So is Kratos like working for Ares then? At that point?
See, that's the thing. I never played Ascension. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I remember this part during recording. I died like 3 times here. One very hilarious way, which I think is the clip I'm showing.
The other thing about it, though, is that, like, I mentioned that, yeah, you shouldn't have to think about character depth too much, but, you know, there's a difference between being obsessed with character depth and narrative depth, like some modern games are doing, and just wanting there to be a serviceable character arc involved. Like, the original Ratchet & Clank had some really good character development going on, and it did it without really being full of itself, which is impressive in its way. And, you know, Devil May Cry 3, to bring that series up again, had that going for... What the...
I died without exactly dying.
Yep.
Oh, jeez. I hate when that happens. It's happened to everyone, too.
Yeah, you know... The part's over.
The part's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, but no, you're right in that you can have like it's not, if you're gonna have a story in your game and you're gonna, just to wrap this up quickly, if you're gonna have a story in your game and you're gonna like give it as much focus as a game like God of War does, it's not too much to ask that the character have some sort of like basic character growth or something that you expect in even like the most
Something
basic
that
of stories. You know,
The important thing is that it needs to progress at a gradual rate throughout the story, rather than just coming all at once later on, like it does with Kratos. Because Kratos doesn't really grow or change or interact with his own story so much as he just kills his way through it, and then eventually something slaps him in the face with the idea that he's
We'll
supposed
get
to be
to
human.
3 eventually.
Yeah. Like, hey, we need you to have some humanizing moments now, Kratos. Wake up. You can stop killing things for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So the execution is unbalanced, is what I should say. Like, the ideas
execution. It's funny because that means killing.
Okay, but before we go any further, save it for next part.
Yeah, all I want to say is that the ideas are kind of there. It's just that they're not used to their full potential, is all, I suppose.